You know, it's no secret, Washington's broken. People are unhappy with Washington, D.C. Career politicians, both Democrats and Republicans, have ignored the best interest of Americans. They've allowed the debt to spiral out of control, $23 trillion. They've stripped South Carolina and other states of their rightful power and robbed each of us of our personal liberty. It isn't new. Didn't happen with Trump. Decades, maybe more than a century. The simple fact is that Washington will never limit its own power. Just will never happen. They'll never pass an amendment to balance the budget. They'll never put term limits on themselves, for heaven's sakes. And they'll never step aside and allow we states to have our rightful authority that is provided for us in the Constitution. America's in peril. It isn't just yesterday or the day before. It's in peril on all of these levels. Something's got to be done. This isn't a red and a blue issue. This is a red, white, and blue American issue. We need to solve this issue. And only you legislators in all these states have the power to actually bring a solution to it. Never forget, the states created the federal government. The states are the parent, and the federal government's the child. You know, we don't do too good on history anymore. Here, sitting right here on Tuesday for a couple of hours about this, teaching the founding documents and the Constitution, and I chaired that meeting for the universities. And so, you know, two-thirds of, there's been a poll, that two-thirds of the college students and young Americans think Judge Judy is on the Supreme Court. Come on. We're really messed up. Fortunately, our founders knew that the federal government might one day become too large, too powerful, and they specifically inserted a mechanism in the Constitution, a tool to stop a runaway government. Article 5 of the Constitution explains that if two-thirds of the states submit an application to Congress, their only duty is they must call a convention of states for the purpose of proposing amendments to the Constitution. A convention of states operates just like it sounds. Each state sends a delegation to pick that delegation. Those are called commissioners. And the states would then discuss and vote on amendment proposals. It's important to understand. A convention of states can only propose amendments. There are those who say it can go wild and run away and rip up the Constitution. It can only propose amendments. By itself, it can't change one word of the Constitution. Each amendment proposal must be sent to the states for ratification. It takes 3/4 of the states, that's 38 states. They must come to agreement, just like it is if Congress were proposing amendments. So 15 states have filed the application for a convention of states legislation that you have before you, one of the two bills. Georgia has already passed that, Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, 15 states. And a number of other states have it in play in their national movement. There is a huge citizens' grassroots movement. Many of them sit behind me today. I thank them for standing for liberty. They aren't alone. A poll of South Carolinians, a poll of 1,200 South Carolinians, if you know anything about research and polling, that's a lot of people. You know, 400, 800, 1,200 is a huge sample. 75% the federal government. I'm shocked. I'm shocked it's not 95%. When you ask them about the idea of a convention of states and explain it to them, 71% are in favor of that. 71% of South Carolinians are in favor of that. There's polling in other states that says it's even more, like in North Carolina, it may be close to 80%. The founders knew the federal government might one day become drunk with its own power. And have we not seen that? They knew the federal government would step outside of its bounds. So they included, at the very last of putting the Constitution together, a safety valve, and it's called Article 5. And it simply says this Constitution can be amended by either the Congress or the states. It's as simple as that. They knew. They argued very much that we had to have a safety valve. You couldn't rely on Congress. God, these guys were smart, weren't they? So a convention of states, an Article 5 convention of states, is the safest, most legitimate, lawful, and certainly most effective means to solve the problems in Washington. The Constitution is a brilliant document. Nobody wants to shred the Constitution, but it's high time we use it as the founders intended, and that's Article 5. I ask, if not now, for the course correction, when? When would that be? We know it's now. It's time for bold action. It's time for you to consider this. You are, as legislators in America, the founders intended us as states to be sovereign. You are the most powerful elected officials in America, right here, right in front of me. You are. That's the way it was intended. We've gotten it turned upside down. Well, you have a chance to fix that. By the way, there is a runaway convention of states right now, more or less, and it's called. Do you know that more than 11,000 amendments have been proposed by Congress? 11,000 amendments to the Constitution. On average, about 100 a year are filed. I checked a little bit ago, and it was like 55 so far this year. Last session, they proposed 71 amendments. Well, they can't even get traction up there to get those going, and I'm not sure I would like any of those amendments. The Article 5 Convention of States legislation you have before you is to limit the federal government. It's not to limit anybody's rights, no citizen's right. It's to limit, it is absolutely specified to limit, and we have the power as legislators to even further limit the commissioners that you would select and send there. Who would those commissioners be? I'd be happy if my colleagues here in the House and the Senate, if those would be the commissioners. They're smart people. They say there's not the Hamiltons and the Jeffersons today, and I say hogwash. Of course there is. I work with some of you. You're good public servants, and would be happy to represent the state of South Carolina.
Go to conventionofstates.com, press the button, sign the petition. More importantly, get 10 of your friends to do the same. When you sign the petition, then that sends a letter to your state legislator. You go on the list in their district as a supporter. We deliver those lists to the state legislators. It means something to them.